Mr. President, thank you for availing us the opportunity to have this interview.
My pleasure, thank you.
How would you describe your first visit to Tanzania as president as we mark 60 years of diplomatic relations and development cooperation?
Well, warmth, hospitality, friendship. It's lovely to be in Tanzania. I think we have a strong identity link through President Martti Ahtisaari, who was an ambassador here from 1973 to 1977. I think we've had cooperation for over 60 years.
Yes.
So it's really nice to come back here, and it's been a very warm welcome at the airport, at the State House, in different types of seminars. So I've really enjoyed my time here so far.
Going through what you've done, you have been an international civil servant, a politician, academician, and before you became president. And it seems you developed interest in issues of geopolitics, peace, and security. How would you describe the current conflicts in the world, in Africa, in Europe, in the Middle East?
Yeah, obviously, it's a big question, but to summarize it, I think we're seeing a change in the world order, similar to the one we saw after World War I, World War II, and the Cold War. And we can either get it wrong, as they did after World War I, League of Nations wasn't strong enough, or more or less right, as we did after World War II, with the creation of the UN and the multilateral system. Or then we can be lazy, as we were after 1989, when we thought that all 200 nations of the world would revert to some form of liberal democracy, market economy, and globalization. And now we live in a multipolar world, so it's not bipolar like the Cold War or unipolar like after the Cold War. And that means that there are power vacuums. So if the United States is not there, or if the United Nations is not there, you're going to have a whole bunch of different players. So we're seeing an increase of conflict. Conflicts after the Cold War used to be local. So there were civil wars. Then suddenly they have become regional. Russia's war of aggression on Ukraine, Palestine, and Israel, and then of course the conflicts that we see in East Africa have both an internal and external dimension. But one thing is common, is that there are a whole bunch of players trying to influence it. So we're seeing an increase of conflict, and we need to do something about it. And in my mind, we need to strengthen multilateralism.
And exactly, that's what we would like to know about the impact on Africa. What would the impact be?
Well, I've just finished writing a book. It's called The Triangle of Power, Rebalancing the New World Order. I worked on it for 4 years when I was in academia and finished it now that I became president. My big thesis is that we have 3 spheres of power. The global West wants to maintain the current order. The global East wants to break it. Now, who is going to decide? It's the global South. So there's an effect on the global South of all the big power conflicts that we have. But my point is that if we want to preserve the UN, we need to reform it. And that reform means that the global South needs to get agency and power in the system. Because the current multilateral system was created after World War II in the image of the victors of World War II. And now we're in a situation where the global South, countries like, say, Tanzania or Kenya from this part of East Africa, they are middle powers, swing states. And they don't have to make a choice between the global West and the global East, but they can push the global East or the global West in a direction or other. So I think it's interesting times. It'll take about 5 to 10 years for the system to settle.
Let's talk about Finland, a country which I was at one time privileged to study in. And I learned that Finland transformed itself into a first world country, industrial country, developed country, credited with the best educational system and the happiest citizens in the world. And it was able to do that half a century, something like that. How did you pull it off? And what can Tanzania learn from the experience?
I mean, I'm always reluctant to give lessons. I come from a very non-colonial past. So all I can do is give examples of how I felt that Finnish society progressed. So for those of you who are not closely acquainted with Finnish history, we gained independence from Russia in 1917. We have a very distinct language, culture, and history. Then we fought the Soviets when they attacked us in World War II in what we call the Winter War and the War of Continuation. When we became independent, we were a poor developing country. After World War II, we were destroyed by the Soviets, and then we started to build society. Now, what was the secret of success? I think you mentioned one of them, education. If you don't have a general population that is educated or doesn't have skills, then you're not going to develop. Second was free entrepreneurship. So you allow all flowers to flourish, and you take responsibility. That you don't have a very hierarchical system. It's an equal system. And I think that helped. So you try to do your best. If you don't succeed, on top of that, number three, there's a strong social security system and a healthcare system. So if you have the basic tenets of society functioning, then you thrive. Then I would argue that our big success has been in the past 25 years, 35 even. And that meant that when the Soviet Union collapsed, Finland joined the European Union. We had Nokia. So it was a combination of political liberation and economic liberation, which led then to our success. And happiness, of course, is relative, but it's a good ranking to have won 7 years running.
Anything Tanzania can probably pick a leaf from Finland? I mean, Finland's experience, of course, we are different. You are in Europe and we are here. But we've had cooperation for 60 years.
Yeah, I think integration and cooperation is a good starting point. And that's what you do. You know, you do it in SADC, you do it in the EAC, you have good partnership and relationship with countries like Kenya. So if you sort of integrate the economies, I think that's a good starting point. And secondly, you know, I repeat, you have to give an individual power and autonomy to decide. Because if you live in a hierarchical society, then people will not have the courage to do stuff. And I think that's a good starting point.
My last question to you. You've been here since yesterday, and you've had several engagements, including meeting with President Samia Suluhu Hassan. Your message, and also, of course, about the future of our cooperation.
Well, the message is a positive one and an optimistic one. On a macro scale, it is take agency. You have power. You are the future of the world. You know, the African continent is going to go from 1 billion to 4 billion people. You have a demographic curve which us up in the north can only envy about. Use that. Second, cooperate as much as you possibly can with your neighbors in the region and globally. And I think we'll see a world which is in a much better place in the next decade.
Mr. President, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.
Yes.